been a couple of days since the FA Cup game against Burton on Saturday, and a good amount of time to sort of reflect on what happened in the game and how it impacts on us going forward. Let's be honest, West Ham's 1-0 FA Cup win over Burton was a bit of a nervy affair, bit of a boring affair at times. It's got a bit more interesting as the game wore on, but certainly the first half was nothing to write home about, and maybe the second half was just a little bit more interesting than the first. Extra time, of course, is where the real action happened. And given the history that we have in cup competitions, we've been on the receiving end of a number of cup upsets and a number of scares that have haunted West Ham's history over the years. We've got form, losing to Bristol City in the FA Cup a couple of years ago, the almost disastrous game against Kidderminster in 2022, which needed the Declan Rice-inspired substitutions to get us through that. And who can forget the 4-0 thumping away from home at the hands of Oxford United a few years ago, the awful defeats against Wimbledon, Wrexham back in the 60s, it goes on. Our history is littered with embarrassing cup exits, and it could have happened again on Saturday. Nuno needed Crescencio Somerville to come off the bench to score the 95th minute winner in order to send West Ham through to the next round of the Cup, the 5th round. But the tie kind of exposed a few problems that the manager needs to now address. Look, our starting lineup was very different. 10 changes to the team that played against Man United. I don't necessarily mind the setup. Nuno picked Areola. He made that really clear, didn't he, in his press conference, pre-match press conference, that Areola is now the future Cup goalie, and Hermansen seems to be now the first choice for Premier League games. Now, Areola had a clean sheet, so do you put him back in the team against Bournemouth this coming Saturday, if that's the case? I don't know. Areola apparently has been dropped from the Premier League games because he's too quiet. Not so much, and as I've said before, Nuno kind of blames him for the defeat against Chelsea because he was too quiet. Fair? I don't know. Areola's wife has had something to say about that, given that Areola won the Save of the Month competition, and now he's been dropped from the senior side in terms of Premier League games. Anyway, Areola started. We had Walker-Peters, Mavropanos, Kilman, the much maligned, Ezra Meyers and Oliver Skiles in defence. And then we had a midfield three of Kanté, Magassa, Traore, with Callum Wilson and surprisingly, Keeba Lamadrid playing just off him. It was a bit of a 4-3-3, a 5-3-2, sorry. I guess the surprise was having Madrid in the side. And the bigger surprise, I think, was for Nuno to decide that he had to play 5 at the back against a struggling Burton Albion, who are struggling in League One, trying to, save themselves from relegation. I was a bit shocked by that. I was a bit taken aback that he thought we really had to play 5 at the back. Or was it because we just didn't have the players? I don't know. Maybe if Pablo wasn't injured, we might have started with a different setup. Look, we had our lion's share of the game, 62% of the game, but we didn't really do an awful lot with it. We had a lot of possession, but we only had 5 shots on target to Burton's 3. Given that they only had 38%, 3 shots on target for them was pretty good. They had more shots in total, but it's only 3 on target. The introduction of 3 academy players for the seniors team, the starting lineup, is a clear signal that it was all about squad rotation and a test of depth, and that the Premier League really counts. I actually didn't really have an issue with the 10 changes to the team who played against Man United. The only player that stayed, of course, was Dinos Mavropanos, who got made captain for the day. And I thought that was a nice little touch, given his inspired form of late. But clearly, that team selection suggests that we need to focus 100% on Premier League survival. And given that the opposition we had, no disrespect to Burton, because I think they made a good fist of the game, but given the opposition we had, I guess it made sense to bring in players who aren't getting regular game time, and bring in a couple of academy players to see how they get on. But some players did well, some players did not so well, and that includes academy and senior players. Now, for me, of the academy players, it was Ezra Meyers that kind of stood out for me. I think he had a really solid game in his first starting lineup for the senior team. Meyers, he plays a number of slightly different defensive positions. We see now he can play in a back five, one of three central defenders. He can play in a back four, of course, and he can also play as left back as well. And I thought Meyers had a really good, solid game. There was only one error he made, which was late on in the game, which could have cost us when he headed the ball and it went back into the 6-yard box rather than being cleared. But other than that, I saw a player who grew in confidence, is really good on the ball, really comfortable on the ball, really easy on the eye. And he's a bit of an old-fashioned defender. He's one of those sorts of defenders that it's defending first and everything else after. And the fact that he can play, he is versatile. He can play left back. He's not your marauding left back. He's not he's not like Ollie Scarles or Malik Diouf, where they'll sort of go down that touchline. He's a bit more of a stay-at-home left back, which I don't necessarily mind. I think he had a good game. I think he was really, really good. I think he looked comfortable. I think he looked solid. And he's definitely one for the very near future for me. But what of the other academy players? Well, the one I was looking forward to, really, was Mohamedou Kanté. Given that we've now know that Pablo could be out for the rest of the season, or certainly a large chunk of it, Kanté, I thought, was going to be a prime candidate to not directly take Pablo's place, a like for like, but certainly give us that kind of box-to-box type of midfield, that engine in the middle of the park that we sometimes need. I know we've got Fernandes, but another player like that I thought would have stood well. But he had a bit of a mixed afternoon, to be honest with you. At times, he seemed to be a little bit out of touch of the game. Bit of wayward passing, not quite as confident as I thought I might see him play. But as the afternoon progressed, I think he settled. He started to show the glimpses of what he's really capable of. However, in fairness, if we do not get relegated this season, I believe a season out on loan for him in a championship team would do him the world of good. But the player that surprised us all was, as I mentioned at the start, Lamadrid. Now, when we signed him during the January transfer window, there was a lot of talk about, he was described as being a low-risk, low-cost prospect, one for the future, a bit of a punt. And it was suggested within the club that Lamadrid would spend most of his time with the under-21s development squad, and that senior appearances were unlikely to happen this season. But I guess with Burton in the FA Cup, it did seem like a really good opportunity to see what he was made of. Look, in fairness, I think he actually did rather well. As we all know, Lamadrid is from Venezuela, plays primarily on the left wing, left midfield, known for his pace, directness, and left-footed delivery. He joined West Ham on loan in January from Deportivo La Guaira with an option to buy. Lamadrid grew up in Caracas, came through two notable youth setups, Unimet and Centro Italo Venezolano. Can't pronounce it. Venezolano. He then spent the 2014 2021 in the academy of Deportivo La Guaira, at one of Venezuela's most productive talent pipelines. He made his senior debut for Deportivo in 2022, and he became a regular across the 4 seasons he was with them, making 96 appearances, scoring 14 goals in that time. By 2025, he was considered to be one of the most promising young attackers in the Venezuelan league, and he earned attention from European scouts. Lamadrid earned his first senior cap for Venezuela back in November 2025, making his arrival on the international stage. Now, what we saw on Saturday against Burton was a player who was given a bit of a free role in the middle of the park, just behind Callum Wilson. He would drop back to make himself available for a pass. He would also receive the ball further upfield to try and be that link between midfield and attack. constantly dropping into the pocket between the opposition's midfield and their defence, making it difficult for the opposition to pick him up. I was impressed. He wasn't the great shakes, but he did enough for me to go, well, there's half a decent player there. He's still got a fair way to go before he really gets up to speed. And the 70-odd minutes against Burton isn't a true reflection of how he can really do. It wasn't Premier League opposition, but I think given the circumstances, I think he did rather well. Now, Lamadrid doesn't have the physicality or the presence of Pablo, but once up to speed, I do wonder if he might come anywhere near close to another South American player that we once had, and that's Manuel Lanzini. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing him like for like, but I'm talking about similar stature, similar in style. And if he can do half of what Lanzini did, then perhaps our low-risk transfer could actually prove to be a revelation. Now, going back to the game itself, I guess not having VAR was really refreshing. No constant stoppages, no having to go nuts when a decision doesn't go our way. But we did have our fair share of luck with Burton. They claim to have at least a couple of penalty shouts, especially the first one in the first half when Dinos seemed to go right through their striker, which if that had been the Premier League and if that had been VAR, that would have been given, to be honest with you. But to be honest, we had a shout for a penalty with an obvious handball later in the game, but that didn't materialise either. But I guess the most controversial decision, if you think it is, was the red card shown to Freddie Potts. A needless challenge, but certainly not a malicious one. Now, the referee didn't cover himself in glory because he had the yellow card in his hand, only to change his mind when the Burton players started surrounding him, going on about the foul. The club have stated that they're not going to contest the red card, with a source at the club stating there are no grounds for appeal. Most experts see it as a red or a marginal red. The FA will not overrule that, and an appeal will be seen to be frivolous. What's a marginal red? It's either a red or it's not. And if it is marginal, then maybe that's why you should contest it. I'm not surprised that the club won't appeal it, given that it was pretty evident that the ref looked to... I am surprised that the club are not trying to appeal it, given that the ref was clearly, obviously, had the yellow card in his hand. So I don't know why we wouldn't contest it. But anyway, given that, Potts is now going to miss 3 crucial games: the home game against Bournemouth this coming weekend, and then Liverpool and Fulham away. Now, Potts came back into the starting lineup because of the injury to Pablo. We changed our formation. We went from a 4-4-1-1, 4-4-2 to a 4-5-1. So what's Nuno going to do now for the rest of the games in the Premier League? Well, we know Todibo is back. He served his 3-match ban, the Burton game being the third. So he's available. Now, could Nuno be tempted to stick with a back five where Todibo will line up alongside Disasi and Dinos? But that's going to leave us light in midfield. That's why it was so good having Potts replacing Pablo. And I seriously don't think we can afford to do that. Our recent form has been on the up because we've played with a back four, filled out the midfield rather than filling out the defence. And to revert to a back five would actually worry me, to be honest with you. So there is a need to fix things again. And of all the performances in midfield, perhaps one solution for Nuno is to recall Songutu Magassa into the starting lineup. Now, he too had a bit of a mixed game against Burton. He played the whole game, but his stats weren't great. He made one key pass in all the passes he made, but his overall average pass success rate was 78%, which is not great. He managed to get 3 of 6 long balls to our players. Again, only 50% of that. He only won 9 duels out of 25. But he made 10 clearances and 3 key interceptions. But so he's an option. But I think he was a bit rusty. He's not played that much football lately. And maybe against Burton, it actually done him good. So he's an option to replace Pablo and Potts, who's now suspended. But there is an alternative. Nuno could opt for something different and try Adama Traore. Now, I'm not suggesting Traore should play in the middle, but look look at Traore's stats in the game. He played 82 minutes. He had 2 shots, both not on target. He made 3 out of 5 successful dribbles, 2 fouled twice. He made 2 key passes, and his accurate pass rate was 92%, 21 out of 23, 91%. And he won 6 of his 10 duels. So he did rather well. I'm not suggesting, though, that he should play in the middle, but he can be left out on the right-hand side, and it's an option to bring in Jared Bowen in the middle to play as a bit of a number 10 just behind Castellanos up front. That's an option. I would rather Nuno did something like that, look to pack out the midfield against Bournemouth, against other teams coming up, rather than reverting to a back 5. We didn't look great as a back 5. Solid, yeah, solid, but there was nothing going forward. And that's the reason why the last half a dozen games or so have been better, because we've been more on the front foot. So if we do end up having to go with a back 5 again, that worries me about what happens in further up the pitch. Look, final thoughts on the Burton game? Well, we're still in the cup. There's no reason why we can't go further. And the game against Burton was always going to be a tricky one. A small, intimidating stadium. The pitch was not its best, and it could have resulted in several injuries being picked up. But I guess with the red card aside, we go through without having had to use many of our senior players. Of course, it took the skill of and the pace of Somerville to get us through, which kind of suggests that we do have a very good 11. But do we have enough squad depth when we have the suspensions and the injuries? That's the bit that worries me. Burton should hold their heads up high. They gave us a game, and all credit to them. But what sort of team Nuno is now going to put out when we face tougher opposition is also going to be interesting. The draw takes place on Monday at 6:45, and there's still some big teams in there. So if we do end up drawing, one of the bigger teams, what will Nuno do then when it comes to balancing what we need in the Premier League and what we do in the Cup? I guess that's probably down to what happens where we are going to be in the league in the next 3 games. The next round of FA Cup games is played around the 7th, 8th of March, maybe the 6th on the Friday, depending on European competitions, etc. So the 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th of March is more or less when the games are going to be played in the FA Cup. And before then, we would have played Bournemouth, Liverpool and Fulham. Now, if we can get ourselves, 6 points from those 3 games, or even more, if we can get something out of the Liverpool game, then maybe Nuno might be tempted to put out a stronger team in the next round. If we don't, and we're still battling away down there, and we will be, then Nuno might be tempted again to put out a bit of a makeshift team. But then what will happen then? We may end up sacrificing an FA Cup run. Look, it would be great to have a proper FA Cup run, to be honest with you, this season, because winning can keep the mentality of winning in the Premier League. All to play for, all interesting. Back to the Premier League this coming Saturday. We've got a big game coming up against Bournemouth. We need to win that to keep our momentum going.